All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we are exploring one of the absolute most terrifying apocalyptic climate mysteries in human history, the completely catastrophic anomaly of 1816. We're going to look at how a single isolated geological event on one side of the planet completely rewrote reality for millions of people on the exact opposite side. It's a wild story. I want you to really picture the stark reality of August 1816. You step outside your door in New England, right? You're expecting a nice, warm summer breeze. But instead, bam, you walk straight into a freezing, blinding blizzard. It's almost like imagining a really gritty, high-contrast archival photograph from some forgotten era. Picture people bundled up in heavy winter coats and top hats, walking past snow-covered wooden storefronts, just looking entirely defeated. You'd find your newly planted crops buried under several inches of thick snow, all sitting beneath this eerie, brownish-purple sky where the sun looks like nothing more than a faint, blurry white disk trying to fight through a thick global smog. So the contrast here was just completely jarring. Instead of the vibrant warmth of an expected summer, paralyzed populations were suddenly thrust into this dim, ghostly twilight. And keep in mind, folks at the time had absolutely zero scientific context for what was happening. To them, summer simply didn't arrive, and they genuinely truly believed the apocalypse had begun. And it wasn't just New England. Across Atlantic Canada and Western Europe, it was this chaotic cascade of extreme environmental disasters hitting all at once. We're literally talking about massive snowstorms in June, rivers completely choked with ice, and these relentless killing frosts. When a hard freeze hits in the middle of summer, it doesn't just damage a few plants. It results in a massive, overnight agricultural wipeout. Entire sectors of the food supply simply vanished. Now here is the absolute wildest part. The true culprit behind this sudden frozen twilight, it wasn't local at all. Thousands of miles away in Indonesia, over a year prior, in April 1815, Mount Tambora awoke. Try to picture this: a colossal, towering pillar of black ash, fire, and glowing orange magma erupting violently into the stratosphere. It was a scene of breathtaking, truly apocalyptic scale, completely lit up by fierce forks of internal volcanic lightning. Mount Tambora had suffered the most powerful volcanic eruption in all of recorded human history, literally swallowing the surrounding Indonesian landscape in dark pyroclastic flows. And the sheer scale here is almost unfathomable. Get this: Mount Tambora shot over 100 cubic kilometers of ash and rock straight up into the sky. But when it comes to the global climate, the real kicker was the invisible payload. 60 million tons of sulfur dioxide gas was violently injected straight into the Earth's upper atmosphere. This immense, shimmering blanket of gas is exactly what shifted the color palette of the entire planet, from those fiery eruption reds to an ominous, dusty global haze. And this immense gas cloud didn't just blow away or dissipate. No, it wrapped the entire planet in what we call an aerosol blanket. Think of it like a dense, highly reflective atmospheric layer acting as a giant mirror. It actively blocked crucial solar radiation from reaching the surface. This fundamental atmospheric shift is what altered global weather patterns for over an entire year. Let's break down the science really quickly, because it builds step by step into a total disaster. Step 1. That massive volume of sulfur dioxide enters the stratosphere. Step 2. It mixes and forms that highly reflective aerosol blanket we just talked about. Step 3, it actively blocks out the sun's radiation. And finally, step 4, the Earth, and specifically the Northern Hemisphere, plunges directly into a sudden and brutal volcanic winter. So, bringing it back to the human toll, this sudden agricultural collapse caused the price of basic staples, things you need to survive, like corn and wheat, to absolutely skyrocket by hundreds of percent practically overnight. When food becomes that scarce that quickly, it triggers widespread, desperate famine, fundamentally destabilizing everyday survival for regular people. And you can imagine the societal fallout was utterly devastating globally. Over in New England, forced mass migrations began as families literally fled the frozen, dead fields of Vermont for the American Midwest. In Western Europe, desperate starvation drove violent riots across major cities. And in Switzerland, these constant unnatural storms forced people into a gloomy, rain-drenched confinement indoors. Which actually brings us to a super fascinating cultural byproduct of all this climate chaos. Imagine this incredibly moody, dark scene, almost like a classic Romanticism oil painting. A dimly lit 1816 Swiss villa. Through a large, rain-streaked window, the Swiss Alps are visible, but they're completely shrouded in a thick, unnatural gray-purple fog. Inside, a young Mary Shelley sits at a dark wooden desk by a flickering candlelight, intensely writing on parchment paper, completely trapped indoors by this relentless July rainstorm. Surrounded by these deep, velvety shadows, antique books, and just feeling incredibly isolated, she channeled all that profound dread and climate anxiety directly into her writing. The result of that gloomy, rain-drenched confinement? The birth of her dark, immortal masterpiece, Frankenstein. The monster was, quite literally, born from the atmosphere of a volcanic winter. How crazy is that? This whole incredible history perfectly demonstrates just how fragile and interconnected Earth's climate system really is, right? A single mountain explodes in Indonesia and it stars farmers in Vermont and births a literary legend in Switzerland. It's a lot to wrap your head around, and it leaves us with a pretty chilling final thought to consider. If a sudden volcanic winter struck tomorrow and the sun was blotted out, how would our modern world survive?